Hey everyone, welcome to Past Lives and the Divine. I'm Gina, the host of this podcast, and today I'm going to give you a little sneak peek behind, what it's like to be a hypnotist. I'm assuming if you've listened to a lot of the episodes, hearing the client's point of view, you might be interested in the facilitator's point of view. And regardless, this conversation really, I guess if you zoom out even more, is about intuition, and specifically how I use intuition as a hypnotist. And I have Sarah Leverett joining me, and she's going to be answering the same question, just like how does she describe how she uses hypnosis in her business, working with clients, working in hypnosis. And then both her and I are going to talk about why we think it's such an integral part of our work, just working in these realms that we do when we're, traveling astrally through these different dimensions in that hypnotic trance. And it's so important to us. We put it in our training. So in 2022, Sarah and I launched our training, the Hypnotic Arts Training. And within that, a big pillar of the foundation of the education within that program is you understanding your unique intuition, how it shows up, the unique things it's saying to you, and what that means for your work in hypnosis. So Sarah and I will be talking more about that, our personal experience with it, why we think it's so important, and then why we wanted to put it in the training. But before we get into that, I want to give you a little bit of context about what I mean when I'm talking about intuition and also how we teach it in the Hypnotic Arts Training. So within that training, we really go into what our definition of intuition is. And it's basically our connection to and understanding of the unseen realms, beings, world around us. We go into the clairs and what that means and how that shows up. Sarah and I both share personal experiences of how it's showed up for us, our own journey in understanding our intuition, how it's evolved since we've intentionally tried to understand it, tried to strengthen that connection. And then we talk about what does it mean to be an empath, that sensitivity, whether you're born with it, whether you train it intentionally or it was trained within you growing up for whatever reason. What does it mean to be an empath? And because most of us are at least sensitive on some level, we talk about the importance of boundaries, of ritual, of intention. When you are an empath, it's really, really important when you're working with clients in these realms, when you're working with clients in spaces where you're like releasing, shifting, transmuting energy. As an empath, Sarah and I both believe it's really, really important for the hypnotists that we train, at least, for them to know and understand what that means to them and how they can protect themselves. That's a really, really important thing because it happens in this work, whether you think it's happening or not. We're sensitive, and to just unintentionally carry things that we don't need to is harmful and not helpful. In this realm, we also talk about strategies for channeling, what channeling is, and you might be kind of surprised by that. Almost every, if not every session that I have with a client, they channel at some point. So we talk about what channeling is not, how is it different from memory, how do we remember it after the session, and how we remember memories different after the session. It's pretty cool. So just the idea of channeling and what that means and strategies to do it. For both Sarah and I, we feel that this is really the art part of the hypnotic arts. We believe that there are skills, there are strategies, modalities, different ways of thinking, different scripts you can use, all kinds of ways that we can teach you skills that you can have showing up to this space. But if you are disconnected from your intuition and you don't know how to navigate with your intuition and you don't know how to protect yourself with your sensitivities, then this work is probably going to seem really unattainable and completely draining. And that intuition piece, it's like art. It's unique to you, how you interpret the information, how that information is actually coming in, your ritual and practices for staying connected to that information and to your intuition. It is absolutely an art form. There is no routine I can give you. Why we teach intuition? Because we believe it is like half of the bag of skills that you need to do this job effectively and to do this job in a way where every client goes somewhere and gets something, whether it's healing or stress relief or exploring the root of an issue or something else. For a facilitator to be able to understand these realms, these unseen realms, and navigate with their intuition, it is a huge part of the job. And whether you're a hypnotist or not, if you're kind of like, how is this a big part of the job? One of the ways I can just completely describe it to you is like if a client is stuck in the black. Like if I'm asking them like, where are you now? And they're like, I don't know, I'm just in the black. For more hypnotists than I can count that I have met in trainings, in my personal life, in hypnotic central circles, so many people aren't doing hypnosis because of this fear of like, what if the client gets stuck? And that is not an issue if you are using your intuition, if you understand how these realms work. And we will just, if you know that, you know then being stuck in the black, being stuck in a certain color, spinning, being outside of where you plan to be in that hypnotic journey, it's just a part of the journey. It's not something to fear. It doesn't mean the client's failing. It doesn't mean the hypnotist is failing. It's literally a part of their journey. And so we ask our clients to come in, get weird, go with what comes to mind. And I think that as facilitators, it's our job to do the same, to come in, feel our intuition and go with it. And that's how we get through these tricky situations. That's how clients get through it. And that's how facilitators get through it. And we see that. I see that so clearly in every single session and every conversation I have with a hypnotist who has been trained and is not using it. So that's a little bit about how we teach it in the Hypnotic Arts Training and a little bit about how important I think it is. Before we get into my conversation with Sarah Leverett, where we talk a little bit more about what using intuition in a client session or in this work of hypnosis is like for us, I just want to say to you, I appreciate you all so much. Over the holidays, I got such a boost just in downloads, in reviews, in that sort of thing, and I really appreciate it. It means the world to me that you trust my message and you trust it with me enough to like endorse me to someone else. And I just want to say, as this community gets bigger, I meet more and more people in my real life who aren't as weirded out by the work that I do. And I think it's because of all the conversations that we're having in our personal lives. So if you would like to see more and more of that in your personal life, less and less of people being weirded out by this helpful, entertaining topic, please forward this episode to someone, or take your favorite Past Lives in the Divine episode and forward it to someone. It's kind of a nice segue in if you're not sure if you can have these conversations with someone or not. It's kind of a nice like, oh my gosh, look at what I found. What do you think of this? And it might be a way in. Sometimes that's all it takes is that little push. If everyone did that once, we could double this community overnight. And so I just want to say thank you. It means the world to me. I do think we are changing the world, even if it is our own little worlds that'll grow and grow. Two more things before we get into my conversation with Sarah. First, all the links, including the Hypnotic Arts Training links, are in the show notes. So click there if you want more information. And then just to introduce you to Sarah Leverett. If you've never heard her on the podcast before, she's been on many times over the last few years. And Sarah Leverett is the creatrix behind intuitive empowerment. She's a hypnotist, intuitive, she's a mentor and a writer. She loves to explore the intersection of spirituality and practicality. And as Sarah's client, friend, and coworker, I can say I highly recommend her. If you resonate with her and her message, definitely go check out her website. Her links are in the show notes as well. Gather around the fire for my conversation about intuition, and being a hypnotist with Sarah Leverett. Okay, are we ready? Intuition and work.
Yep.
Sarah, how does intuition show up for you in your work?
Yeah, so I want to start off by saying that intuition always shows up. I think it always shows up for me and it always shows up for all of us. So for me, the journey has been, how do I trust my intuition at work? And so the first thing that comes to mind with that is that I have to be intentional about creating space for myself and for my intuition. And for me, all of my work comes back to intention on the front end and gratitude on the back end. So I'm constantly asking myself, why am I doing this? What is the outcome that I'm looking for? It's like plugging, where you're going into the GPS. The route that you take is going to look different depending on where your intuition leads you. But I have found that like having that point of intention of where you're headed, where you're going, why you're doing something, creates the space for the intuitive process. And then on the back end with gratitude, you create even more space. I truly believe that like when you sit in gratitude for yourself, for your community, for Mother Earth, that you're creating abundance. And the more abundance that you have around you, the more space you have to build that trust. So I think, intention, gratitude, and creating space for myself and to trust my intuition is a big piece of that. The next thing that comes to mind, and it's along the similar lines of trust, is dropping the shoulds. And this has been a huge deconditioning process for me. It's almost like when I hear the word should come out of my mouth, or even just like as a ruminating thought, I consider it a check engine light. It's like, okay, why am I shoulding myself here? And that has bled into my work with my hypnosis clients, my mentorship clients, in my readings. Like when I hear the word should, it's immediately curiosity. Why do I feel like I should be doing this thing? And then refocusing on intuitively, what do I want to do? What do I desire to do? What do I know I should? Back up. What do I know is right for me? See, check engine light.
Yeah.
And it's just about reworking it. Like it's grace, right? Like even in trying to speak about the importance of dropping a should comes up, right? It's just so ingrained in us to think that way. So what is it that I know is right for me? I could keep going here. Should I
Do
pause?
another one?
Should I keep going?
Yeah, just keep going.
Okay, great. So yeah, the next piece of this is getting into my body, right? Like our intuition lives in our bodies, and we're so conditioned to be in our head and to think through things. And then you get into work, and that's even more of a, structured, masculine, logical space. So we have to be willing to get into our bodies, because our bodies let us know what our intuition is saying. And so that looks like, feeling my feet on the ground as often as possible during the workday. That looks like, connecting with nature as often as possible, taking yoga classes when I feel like I need to get grounded, just like any movement that I can create for myself, or any awareness of my body, my breath, is so important. And then I have this word in all caps in my head, rest. Rest,
Yeah.
rest, rest, rest. I feel like this is a huge piece of the puzzle for me with work, and I feel like I want to start talking about it more. I rest a lot, okay? I'm not doing anything before 11 a.m. I have many breaks in between meetings. I'm getting more intentional about blocking whole days off. I work from bed, I work from the couch. I mean, it's just so important that we rest.
I
Our intuition
completely
is
agree.
speaking. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I love any sort of quote or anything. The way I think of it is like, um, and I can tell you, like, I was walking in Minneapolis along the Mississippi and this thought came in. This was probably like 6 or 7 years ago. And it was like, I was really in the space of like trying to embrace exactly what you just said and like embrace it, but embrace it in a way that's actually nourishing, not embrace it in a way where I'm still beating the shit out of myself because I feel guilty because I should be insert, you know? And I love the idea. And I think of it, it's like the way I live now of like the work I do, the rest is not the reward. The rest is where I get the energy to do the work. And thankfully, like you don't have to go very far. Like I'm reading a book by the two authors are Emily and Amelia Nagoski, and it's called Burnout. Thanks, Becky, for the recommendation. But more and more just information is coming in of like pay attention to where your energy goes and recoup that energy, nourish yourself. And to me, just exactly what you're saying is like that is such a big piece of like intuitively moving in a way in my business, for example, in a way that feels good. Because intuition is like, to me, it's like the phone we pick up when we want to like understand or get information from the unseen world, which the soul knowing is unseen to me. So having that, I love that. And just that idea of like, our intuition is in our body. Like we got to get in our body. And so many of us live like outside, like, you know, focusing on how we look or how other people are feeling in the situation. So I just want to reiterate that, like, to me, that was such a huge shift in just like showing up for me. Like it was a real intentional practice and took a lot of like ritual and planning when I first started out, but now it's just automatic. How did that go for you? Is that something that like, as you intuitively like meander through your business and just everything that you shared, how do you navigate that? Like, how do you change practices? How did you start doing it? What does that look like for you?
Yeah. Yeah. At first, I feel the same way. Lots of ritual, lots of intention. I feel like there's a lot of connotation around the word discipline, but when it's discipline that you are passionate about, it feels really good, and it does like build that muscle memory, and it does help integrate. Like the very first piece of the puzzle for me when I think back to 2016 was yoga, right? And at first I was doing yoga every single day, every day. There was not a day that I did not miss yoga. Now, would that fit into my life the same way? Absolutely not, right? Like now, if I get into a yoga studio one day a week and on my mat another day a week, I'm feeling really good. So it's like remembering that it's all a spiral, it's not a straight line. So like when you're feeling super passionate and disciplined in a certain area, go for it. But when that motivation dies off for whatever reason, go with that as well. And in those spaces of not feeling it, getting curious, you know, still trying to come back to that like inner child wonder, playfulness, and see like, well, what does spark something for me? And if you're in an in-between for a while and the answer is nothing, lean into that as well. The quote, when it feels like you've been buried, maybe you've really been planted, is coming into mind.
Oh, I've never heard that.
I wish I could remember the exact quote or even who said it, but it's this idea of, yeah, it's like change of perspective. Like you feel buried under the weight of the shoulds and the lack of motivation and the heavier emotions, and just being able to say, okay, maybe I am buried, but maybe that means that I'm planted as well. And that like, I need this time. And that, you know, the spring comes again.
Yeah. And trusting that, like, and I think for me, like in that process for me, it used to be hard to trust that like that motivation will come back. It was almost like I was so used to living, if you were to put like the way we live into seasons, like it was summer all the time. And the thought of even like relaxing into winter just made me feel like you're never going to get off the couch. Da, 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 da. And it's like when I can look back and reflect on my life, I can see that this energy, this flow, this motivation, this creativity ebbs and flows. And so if anyone is like, "Ooh, that seems scary," of like resting and relaxing more, just to know that like, if that is part of the fear of like, if I stop, I'll never start going again, that probably number one means you need to fucking rest because your body is just like, crying for it. But you will, like, it's natural for us. It's that spiral of like, it's not about like the things we do or don't do anymore or in the future or in the past or whatever. It's about like, how are we feeling in that? Like, does it feel good? Do we feel nourished? Do we feel relaxed? Do we feel aligned? Okay, Sarah. So my next question for you is, given all that, it's pretty clear why you would put it into the hypnotic arts training. But for you, why was it important that we added that piece on intuition in the hypnotic arts training?
I do value knowledge, structure, order, and the science behind something. But I think we were really intentional about choosing the name Hypnotic Arts. And I think in order for us to truly honor and respect the fact that it is an art, we have to be willing to ask questions, make those systems and those structures work for us, trust ourselves when the script doesn't go as planned, ask the questions that we know are the right questions to ask. And in order to really do that and to build that trust and that confidence, you have to lean into your intuition. Or else, you're in the middle of a hypnosis session, the script doesn't go as right as how you planned it to, or how the script is telling you it should go. And then, you get stuck and you kind of go into that like fear space. And you may find yourself in the fear space either way, but I think working with intuition, it's like you won't get stuck. It's like,
Yeah.
even if you do hit something that feels different or not as you planned, and then all of a sudden that like, well, what do I do next feeling comes up. Building an intuitive practice and having tools in your tool belt gives you the space to take a deep breath, get in your body, and go with the next thing to be right and true for you.
Yeah.
And then naturally you encourage your clients and the other people you come in contact with to do the same thing. It's like when we're setting that example as facilitators and leaders, we're then, it's like just like a permission slip for the people around you to do the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That like lead by example thing, that like kind of quiet leadership where you're just like noticing who someone is and like how their values are coming out through their actions. I absolutely love it. And I would say the same thing, like the art part of it all is like, I think that I think of intuition as, again, like the phone line between us and the unseen world, whether that's within us or around us or astrally somewhere else. And so if we are teaching people how to step into those realms and guide people into those realms, I think it's a pretty silly move to like not teach people like how their phone works when they're in touch with those realms. And then again, we ask clients to show up, get weird, go with what comes to mind. I know it's going to be weird and awkward. And I think it's really even more important that the instructors do that, or the facilitators, hypnotists that we're training do that. And in that, we know, again, like you said, then we can get unstuck. That's how we get unstuck. And in doing that, knowing that we know us and how to navigate those realms and keep us and our clients safe, it's like that discipline, that structure gives us so much freedom and so much joy in navigating those realms. And then taking the gifts even from like kind of the situations where it was like, oh, it kind of started a little scary. It's like, look what I did. Yeah, I think it's so important, just that intuitive piece. And I really do believe it is an art form, like it's a craft that the more we do it and who we work with and who we are, it's just like always growing and changing. And that growth and change, I feel like, is just less fear inducing and way more joyful when we're in contact with our intuition and we can trust it and ourselves.
Yeah, I also want to point out that while we teach hypnosis as a modality, we don't claim that there's one right way to do it or that there's not room for improvement and growth and like bringing hypnosis with us into the age of Aquarius. And so that's the other piece of this intuitive puzzle for me, is like empowering the people that we're training to ask those questions, to move the modality forward, to follow what they know to be right, and not so much relying on, well, this is the way it's always been.
One more super random question before I let you go. So in kinship this year, I'm doing like a weekly card read. And I'm just curious, for you, the number 2, do you work at all like with numerology? What does the number 2 mean to you?
First and foremost, balance. Duality, balance. Depending on which card it's associated with, it's like, do we need to find balance? Is this a time of balance? Give and take, push and pull, like the feeling that comes when you're trying to find balance, what you can do to kind of, it's like I get an image of a tightrope.
Yeah.
But yeah, also like that duality piece as well. Like I'm pretty much anti-binary, but like there is a helpful perspective if in like the sun, moon, masculine, feminine, if you're looking at it from a curious perspective and not like this is how things are.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you?
Yeah. To me, very much that, especially one of the cards I pulled was 2 of Pentacles. So I really feel that, just kind of like that balance, duality, push pull. And then the other one was 2 of Cups, which I was like, wow. I really think of the 2. I can't help but like see the number 2 in my brain when I think of it. And to me, it looks like someone kneeling in surrender. And so I think of 2 as like devotion and surrender. And it might be devotion and surrender to like a push or a pull that was unexpected. It might be devotion to seeking that balance, devotion to, I think of 2 of Cups as really like nourishing yourself, meeting yourself, even the parts of yourself that you don't like, and just devoting yourself to something, whether it's love, nourishment, compassion, and living like a devotee of it, even if it is just like, for 5 minutes a day or whatever, or you're not going to think you should do X, you're really going to protect your peace or whatever it is. But that just came up, and I'm someone who just sees a lot of 2s, and actually that's been my whole life. I mean, my birthday is on the 22nd. I am a twin. Like, I just like the number 2. But what's so funny is like I'm changing in the sense of, for some reason, it seems like that's now changing to 6. What does 6 mean to you?
6 is one it's not as intuitive to me. Like when I think of that
Me either.
number, immediately, like the such negative connotation that we have around the number 6, like 666, right?
Yes.
So it's almost like what's underneath the surface, what's really in the shadows, getting comfortable in that space, exploring the unknown, the unseen. If 7 is enlightenment, right, then 6 is like what comes before enlightenment, like not being enlightened or not feeling clarity. Perspective comes to mind. Like I think about the like 6-9. They're the same but different. Perspective. Wow, yeah. What about you?
Yeah, so I think of 6, and my numerology really just stems from me trying to understand the tarot more. And I think of right away when I think of 6, I think of 5 and 7, just like the context of like, where is this on the path? And I think of 5 as like a contraction, like, like, I like what I get from running, but I hate running. Running might be your 5 energy, where it's like, there's good that's going to come of this. And, it's a short pain for like something that's for the highest and greatest good. So that's what I think of as 5, kind of like even labor to produce a child, or even pregnancy to produce a child. And so I think of the 6 as like this, almost like this pause in between, like we're not full contraction, but we're not like fully expanding, abundant, kind of like in a creative flow. I think of that. So I think of 6 as almost like this like in between time. And this is probably gleaned from like other people's thoughts on 6 or 6 tarot cards that I feel like, but I feel like it's like this quiet time where, and the pause might be a year, it might be a day, but it's this space where it's like, okay, you might be a little wary from the journey. Things are coming. What can you do to like prepare for that? But not like, oh, I'm going to do a bunch of work, and instead like prepare yourself, like be in it, nourish yourself. And just like in the tarot, it's always, like in a time of transition, or I right away think of like the 6 of Swords, where it's like you might not see land where you came from and where you're going, but like you're headed in that direction. And what can you do for yourself right now? Like, is it a need that you can fulfill right now while you wait? Is it a need that like that nourishment is going to help propel you forward when you actually get to that time of expansion? But I feel like a lot of 6s are coming in where I used to get 2s, whatever that means.
Interesting. 6s. I pulled a card for Hypnotic Arts the other day and got Princess of Swords. And in my deck, it's like in one hand, she's holding almost like a scroll. It kind of looks like a diploma, something you would see in like knowledge, education. And then in the other hand, she's got that sword. And it just felt so right. It was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like we're on this like adventure with princess energy, and like one hand holding the knowledge, one hand holding the like art, the intuition.
Yeah.
Just felt very powerful.
What beautiful imagery. Does the princess correlate with the knight or the page, like in the regular Rider-Waite? Do you know?
I would think the page.
Yeah.
But I don't know for sure.
Yeah. And I think when I think of the pages, I think of like the journey that we do in the numbered cards, like 2 to 10. And then like the court cards are us, like kind of like standing up and being like, okay, I'm going to stand on this. I'm going to live like this. I'm going to do it. And so when I think of the pages, the first one of the court cards, I think of like this really, like one of my favorite pages is the Page of Wands in the Rider-Waite. So Pamela Coleman Smith's imagery is like this page, like looking up at his wands, like, whoa, like I see it as like reverence, like be reverent, like kind of like yes, you've been through it. Yes, you've been initiated. Yes, you're choosing to live. You've had some practice, however it is that you're going to live based on whatever card you pulled. But it's really this like like this knowing and never forgetting of like this foundation, the foundational stuff, and like where you grow from, where you came from. And so I do think of that like as hypnotic arts for sure, especially like all the intuition talk around it, like that we do in hypnotic arts, and just understanding your soul gifts through your intuition, and like what does that mean for you in hypnosis. And yeah, that's so beautiful. And the swords, man, I feel like that's where it all starts to me, is the swords is like, they're our thoughts. They can make us go or make us stop dead in our fucking tracks. To me, if I were to line it up, it's like swords. Then we understand our gifts, our power, our fire. That's the wands. Then we probably burn ourselves out, and then we take care of ourselves in the cups. And then pentacles is just like that divine manifestation through us. Like the divine plus soul plus earth suit plus third dimension. Like, what does that look like for you? That's a fucking cool card to
I
pull
agree.
for that. Yeah.
I have to send you the imagery. Yeah, I was excited about it when I saw it. And I love that we have the sword as one of our symbols. Like it's so right.
I know. Yeah. To me, when we were first thinking about like, what's this going to look like in the website, I just always just kept thinking like Queen of Swords, Queen of Swords, Queen of Swords. That's really cool that you pulled the princess. There it is. That is our episode for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. As always, take anything that makes your load lighter and just leave the rest.